Hello.
Hey.
It's once again a bit of an unusual time for our recording, but still we are doing this. And this is episode number 20 of Biweeklycast. And the hosts are still here. And this one of the hosts is me. I'm Dima Valenko.
I'm Slava Rudnitsky, and I'm the other host. And this is episode 20 of Biweekly podcast.
Right. And today we are talking about the book called The Decision Book.
Yep, but before we get to the discussion, there is a follow-up from our previous episodes.
Yeah, actually, that's a bit of a follow-up from the previous episode where I forgot why I put that thing which said that person who sends you automated messages and reach outs. I thought that maybe we should not be too harsh on those people, in a sense that, yes, my reconstruction of the dynamics there is that you work in a kind of occupation which requires you to reach out to people with maybe proposals and stuff like that. So you would extend your network. You would put effort to extend your network, and then that network would contain people who are your personal acquaintances and people who are your maybe more professional like contacts. And you, at some point, you would want to leverage some sort of automation to make stuff better, faster, the good stuff. But since all of the people are mixed, you do not want, well, not necessarily, not that you do not want to put effort. It just maybe doesn't cross people's mind to put effort and kind of segregate and isolate people who are like personal contacts versus professional contacts, and they kind of do set up the system to send reach out emails, and they just blanketly send to everyone under the sun in their contact book. And it kind of creates this dynamic. On one hand, you want to get benefit of automating something and doing more for cheaper and faster, but at the same time, in order to do that properly, you have to put effort into it, which means you spend more time doing this, which contradicts the first idea of doing this thing in the first place. How's that for a theory?
I know. I think that in my worldview, the only way anything deserves automation, if it's done perfectly or if it brings a lot of value when you do it manually, and then you see a lot of repetitions, and then you think, all right, like I've been sending these messages quite effectively. People react to them. People like them. It makes a lot of sense. They're useful. I know how to target them to specific people, so everyone gets what they need. Probably I should automate this process and make it just in the flow.
Right.
But if it's just a mass newsletter with, I don't know, greeting cards or birthday wishes or something which is exactly the same, and I do get sometimes the same birthday wish with the same person on Facebook like 3 years in a row without any reactions or correspondence, and that does seem more like relationship damaging activity rather than relationship building activity. So if you'd like to automate something, please make sure that it's targeted and it brings value.
Right, and maybe ask feedback from people, because like I can see but let's say like you send those emails, you do that manually, and you send it to one person to another person, and they say, hey, thanks for sending this, that was really useful, and then you decide, I can make more people happy with my email, and then you blanket send to all of your LinkedIn contacts. But like to the person, it may appear that they've done their due diligence. They checked with people. People seem to have liked it. It's just it didn't occur to them that not everyone under the sun would like it. Yeah, just be thoughtful.
So that was
right?
A follow-up to a follow-up, and now a follow-up to an episode.
Right, a follow-up to an episode. So last time we discussed and we talked at length about to-don't lists, and you know how that syndrome, Bader-Meinhof syndrome works. When you notice something, it keeps kind of hunting you and appearing over and over again. And this happens to me. No surprises there. I was listening to the very latest. Well, it was not the most recent published episode of You Are Not So Smart podcast, which happens to be a rebroadcast of their earlier episode about the science of stuck. And the host and guest there did discuss to-don't lists, for what it's worth. And the episode was quite interesting. I would rather recommend it. It's not about the to-don't lists themselves, but they did mention this as a concept.
Fair enough. And the link will be in our show notes, and we are ready to jump straight to the book.
The book. Tell me.
The decision book.
Yeah. Tell me, how have you decided to read this book? Like, where does it come from?
I was a victim of marketing because I was... firstly, shout out to Ukrainian website Yakabu, because these guys happen to have quite an intensive stock of English business-related literature in Ukraine available to ship tomorrow. And I was just shopping for my marketing and biz dev activities. I got something like 8 or 9 books. And then these algorithms learn something about you, and they start suggesting like, maybe you would be also interested in getting these, and these. And the cover of the decision book was really appealing. Like, they put all the right words there. There was the word model, there was strategic thinking. And I did make a mistake, and I judged this book by the cover. And my bad. And I apologize for that.
What was your judgment, though? Like, when you said it was a mistake, how did you judge it? Did you say it was not promising and then it overshoot your expectations? Or
I thought it was something like Untool's website, which we discussed in one of our previous episodes, with some details, examples, stories behind the models. I didn't realize the size and the level of details, and there were no sample pages on the website, so I couldn't see how detailed it is. So I said, I'll give it a try. And then when I got it, I really liked this first, map that they have on the cover with these scales about thinking, doing, others, myself, and all the pages and models just mapped around, and many interesting names there. So I thought, I should give it a try. And then I engaged you because it's boring to read by myself. So I just got you on board. But then I saw the amount of useful points and the amount of criticism you wrote in the notes, and that's what I apologized for.
No, we should. We will get there. I mean, as you may already know, that I never feel bad about reading books, even if I happen to disagree with what they say.
Unless it's Simon Sinek.
Well, yes, but then we learned a lot from that book, didn't we? Right.
That is true.
This is great.
So, for people who haven't read the decision book and haven't seen the decision book, which you got from the library?
Yes, I did. It says, where does it say? It says somewhere London Borough or Fredbridge. Yeah, library. Yeah, it's a book from library, indeed.
Which means you can actually give it back and not feel bad that you bought it.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations. The book basically promises to teach you 50 models, the way people think, and they kind of highlight the word model a lot. Like, it's used in many titles, and basically you can not name everything in this book as a model, but you could say that these are the methods. And I think that's a fair name. Some of them are more broad, some of them are not so broad. And they are split into 4 parts. Yeah, something about...
Right. Those 50 models, myself. How to improve myself, how to understand myself better, and then kind of symmetrically how to improve others and how to understand others better.
And I was surprised they don't have these scales somewhere. It looks like a perfect picture, one of many that they get there.
But they do, right? They do it. They have it on the. Or did you mean?
So you think doing and thinking is understand and
well,
improve?
No, like I guess we would have many questions to how they structure the models or ideas they present there, but yeah, it's a bit weird. But they tried. They tried, I guess.
Let's start with a piece of optimistic feedback.
Right.
I liked reading the book, mostly because I was just chilling in the countryside, looking at the lake, and I was not really as stressed as I would be at home. And this book kind of helped me reconsider models that were there once again.
Interesting.
Because I did have my judgments about, let's say, 80% of stuff in this book. Like, it was not brand new. It was something mentioned previously. Some of that, I just had an emotional trigger on, like, Pareto rule or principle.
Right. I guess.
I would say, like, all right, if you mention Maslow's pyramid or Pareto principle, you kind of lose me in the conversation.
Didn't those two go like one right after the other or something like this?
Yep.
Right.
And in this case, I was like, I still don't get it. And the explanation still doesn't help. But I felt more zoomed out, because normally when I get into a specific model, it's kind of more of an editor's mindset. You start looking for evidence, for proof, for how this method works, what are the exceptions. But when it's like the 40-something method that you have just seen, you can just say, no, like I've tried this, doesn't work. I've tried this, doesn't work. I do this instead. This is how I judge. This is my estimation criteria. Mm-hmm. So it helped me understand the way I make decisions by rejecting the models from the book one by one, and it helped me get my success criteria. And I even drew a few pictures on the back pages where there was, it's not a library book, so I can actually draw there.
Well, someone made a lot of markings in this book, even though I got it from library. So yeah, maybe it doesn't work this way. Interesting, because I think I would agree with you that the value, at least I get from books like this, is like the meta value, thinking about how the book was written, how it's structured, what's in there, rather than about specific ideas that authors try to portray. And the first moment when I started judging this book was when you told me the title, and I checked that the subtitle says 50 models for strategic thinking. Like the 50 thing got me triggered, because how like, first of all, that's 47 too many. Like 50 models for strategic thinking, it's 47 too many. But then on the other hand, it does feel like authors decided that 50 would be a good number. That they generally have like 2 pages per model, and they maybe wanted to hit like 150 pages mark for their book or something like this. But 50 is such a round number, so you would know, like I would expect that for this to be artificially inflated, so that something fishy is going on there, and I guess that kind of tainted my further interactions with the book.
I started reading this book twice. In my first try, I stopped after page 20 with a lot of irritation.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to recalibrate myself. And I thought, all right, deep breath, and you can do that. And after this deep breath, I managed to find a number of pages that I found useful. The first one from my side is a feedback analysis by Peter Drucker, the management guru from the 90s, maybe from 2000s as well. It's page 20. And it's a very simple idea. It's definitely not a model, but by the time I was reading this page, I kind of ignored the title about the models. And I thought, that's something I probably should try. The idea there is that before getting into a project, you could actually write down all of your expectations about it. And as you exit the project, you could write down all the outcomes and the results.
Mm-hmm.
And the art is getting your expectations as close to the actual result as possible. Let's say I'm going to record a single episode of a podcast with someone.
Right.
And I could definitely write down what I think it should be, it should go like, and then I could compare and make a little retro after it and put those 2 pages together, especially if I answer the same questions. Like answering the same, let's say, 6 to 7 questions before and after the project is done. And I would say that this seems like a really valuable thing that I've never done, and I would definitely like to try it.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I kind of glossed over this thing because by this page I was still looking for models. Like, where are the where are the models, please? So I definitely, I guess, spent a little less time thinking about the ideas themselves because I was kind of still agitated by the idea that most of what they present are not actually models, but this one sounds interesting. And I think in a sense it kind of for me it connects with another idea from another book that I read or listened to recently, which was called the Bernoulli paradox, about the a bit of a challenge or problem with how we do statistical analysis, including the statistical analysis for softer sciences like sociology, psychology, and so on and so forth, and talking quite a lot about the replication crisis and stuff like that. And one of the kind of problems or kind of challenges with this whole setup was in that researchers or scientists would do analysis, gather the data first and then analyze it and try to find interesting quirks in the data instead of predetermining what it is what is the hypothesis that they want to check and then checking that. And I think that is a very, very interesting idea on a smaller scale. Thanks for highlighting this from the book.
Then let me try another one, which is just the next page.
Okay.
It's John Whitemore's approach to goals. And the way they describe this, it's like 14, I guess, checkpoints for a good goal. They start with this SMART model, but then they add a few more abbreviations, which I know you adore. But what I liked about this thing, and that's what I thought. I think it's clear and pure.
Pure and clear,
like
right? Positively stated, understood, relevant, ethical, and clear, challenging, legal, environmentally solid, agreed, recorded. Okay.
What it made me think is that I actually wanted to reconsider my approach to goals and SMART. Well, I think you and I have discussed this quite a number of times, that's why we practice themes, because SMART goals seem quite rigid, and then we do OKRs in Savvy, but still KRs sometimes seem a bit too straightforward. And the idea that you can actually get more criteria for a successful goal, select a few that you would like to use for this period, what I would do for the next strategic session, I would open this list, I would take these 14, I would pick 3 that I like from this list. I would add 2 more criteria for myself that are applicable for my business in this period of time. And it gave me kind of more freedom because, it was mostly SMART in my head when I was thinking about goals. And I was trying to escape SMART with themes and OKRs, but still it was not really getting anywhere. And this approach by John Whitemore kind of made it easier for me to reconsider and get rid of the chains of SMART and see that it could be a longer list, a shorter list, a different list of criteria that I define as a successful goal.
Interesting.
Probably this model is not about this, but it kind of made me think about it.
Right. Interesting, because I also kind of liked the idea from this presentation, because to me it also feels like there are so many things going on there, where they say that you should distinguish between final goals and performance goals. And basically the idea would be that when there is a big overarching thing that you want to achieve, but when it's something that requires more steps that you need to take towards that goal, it makes sense to kind of specify goals for those steps separately to be more specific, more to make them more measurable, and so on and so forth, and without feeling that you are abandoning or stepping away from the bigger goal. And I guess those 14 criteria for checking goals can help with this. But I guess this would be an example which kind of illustrates my irritation with the book maybe the most, because they say that there is John Whitmore model and nothing in the text refers to John Whitmore or the model itself. Is it those 14 things that we are supposed to measure our goals on? But then, like, my expectation to the model would be that, hey, model highlights the important parts of something to make it simpler, but then it also kind of shows how focusing on these important parts really gives you the result. But here they say, yeah, you should measure your goals against those 14 criteria. Why? How does it help? Remains beside the book. But I agree that it may be useful to look at this from this look specifically at goals from this additional perspective.
Let me try get you through two more, and then we can get to the criticism part.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Let's try.
The next one would be the stop rule on page 46.
Oops.
And I really liked the idea of setting up some conditions when you know that you quit something.
Mm-hmm.
And they made it like there are two ways to do that. You could say, like, I'm just doing it till Friday and that's it. That's a hard stop. Or I keep doing it until the paycheck drops below $100 per hour or something, and then I quit. So, and then it's a flexible criteria, but it's still there. And the idea why there is that if there is something bothering you, you could always define how to end it or when to end it, and it kind of brings you ease with doing something, especially when you're engaged in multiple projects, like I sometimes am.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them are long running, and I should probably know when my exit should happen. Like, when do I stop doing something? This page kind of highlighted the importance of being more specific, not just, getting sick and tired
Mm-hmm.
or devastated or exhausted and then quitting something when you're already out of energy. But when you see that something is happening quite repeatedly,
Mm-hmm.
you could think, when do you leave or how do you leave this thing? And for many projects, that would bring me more understanding why I'm staying as well.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Biweekly. Like,
Right.
my stop criteria would be if I don't get any insights, ideas, pleasure, or fun within 10 episodes in a row. Let's say both of us get really depressed and sad,
Mm-hmm.
and that would be time to stop and press the brakes. And Savvy would probably also have a number of stop factors that could help me out. And that's something I've never done.
Mm-hmm.
So while reading through page 46, it made me rethink some of the project that I'm currently in, and probably formulate this stop rule for the new projects when I enter them.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I also think that this is a powerful idea in general, having like predefined decision for future you, if you know what I'm trying to say. However, I was familiar with this concept from kind of mountaineering kind of situations where mountaineers, when they go up, they have this rule that they must turn back by certain time, otherwise the risk of them getting stuck on the mountain and maybe like having to live through mountain in very hard conditions, which is very dangerous, goes extremely high, and they must turn back by certain time, regardless of how far or how close the summit is and stuff like that. But there, I think it was portrayed as a method for fighting the sunken cost fallacy, where you would feel that, we've gone so far. We've only have to come so little to get to our goal. But no, we must turn because we must for the sake of safety and stuff like that. And I think this, from this point of view, I think that this stop, like defining thresholds for when you change your behavior, make a lot of sense. It's just maybe the explanation or just if rationalization of this method in the book maybe is not on par with my expectations, if I may say so. But I agree that that's really helpful. It's like we also use this in our kind of projects where we need to do, like we try something and it doesn't work, but we need it, and we try, and then we say no. If we cannot do that, well, it would be also similar a little bit to time boxing. But if we cannot do this by set date, we switch gears and we do like try some alternative way, which may be more expensive, costly, or time consuming. But if we are not making progress on this one, we have to switch.
That is fair. And the last one from the bright side of the book that I got is page 142.
Right.
It's basically a model for a very nice kickoff meeting with your team. They describe a number of stages how team is shaped and the number of questions that you have to answer at first for yourself, like why am I here, which is quite a good question, I think.
Right.
Then who are you people around me? What are we doing together, and setting up all the rules about assumptions, goals, vision, and stuff. How we will do that, establishing the methods, resources, decisions, channels, and stuff. And then the rest is about the retro part, I think. But this is something that I tend to struggle with, because as an entrepreneur, I tend to jump to an idea without thinking about this question thoroughly. I can think, we'll get it on the go.
Right.
And sometimes we don't. And I waste a lot of time of my team by suggesting some stupid stuff that if I just answered these questions before I asked them for a meeting, that would make a lot of, I don't know, that would save a lot of time. Let's put it this way. So for me, it's an easy reminder. I'll just have a picture of it, and next time I prepare an agenda for some crazy idea, I would definitely go through these questions just for myself even.
No, I like this one. I think I may have glossed over it a little bit in my reading, but I guess this would be an example of what I would consider, like if the book had 50 of these, or it would be so much greater, because I think this one has, to my mind, like two important characteristics. It introduces like the actual model, so the model of the dynamics of group interaction or conversation, right? They like whoever says that, they say that it goes through certain stages, and you can, like, reading the stages and drawing parallels to the interactions you've participated in, you can say that, yeah, that's roughly true, that makes sense. And then on top of that model, they introduce a method. So, like, knowing that these are important parts for how the conversation progresses, this is how you can make it more successful in the end. This would be like an example of how models are supposed to be used, at least the way I see it. And this one really looks great. And it also, I think, comes with important caveat where they say that there might be certain limitations for when and where this model is applicable, which also makes a lot of sense to me. Cool.
So that was all from the bright side for me.
What do you suggest for that? I also liked, as I said, I was reading through the book. I was kind of appalled by a lot of the stuff is not a model. Even I then reading the introduction, I think I should have the red flags should have gone up right there, because they say that models in this book fulfill following criteria. They simplify. That's right. Models are supposed to simplify. They sum up. Yeah, that's the same as simplify, at least to me. They are visual. I guess visual helps. They are methods. And like, no, you're getting this wrong. Models are not methods. Methods are built on top of models. Like the two things I would highlight in terms of models, which I think like really useful models, would be the Ramsfeld matrix. I was not sure about the name of this one. I didn't know that this is called Ramsfeld matrix, but the idea there is that when you plan for something, for a project, you can divide the things you deal with into kind of known and unknown, and on two axes. Like you know about the thing and you know how to deal with it. So like if you know about the thing, like when you go for a vacation, you need to fill up your car with gas. You know that you need to do that, and you know how to do that. So it's a known. It may be kind of known unknown. You get to a place, you need to check in, but you are not sure if there is a concierge later, like late in the night or in the day when you arrive. So you know that you have to go through this process, but you are not sure. It's unknown how you deal with this. And then of course there can be unknown knowns. It's just you did it, like you know that you need to like sunscreen cream when you go to the beach, and you didn't know that your supply kind of dwindled and you don't have that anymore, and you have to run to a shop to get it. So you know how to deal with this, but you may not know in advance that you will need to do that. And then the really interesting thing would be unknown unknowns, where you don't know something and you would not know how to deal with this, which usually are the ones, the things that cause the most trouble to projects. And I feel like this one would have connections to this idea of bike shedding, where you talk about known things, but the impact on the project from things that are already known usually is not that great, and you may want to think or invest time and energy into understanding the unknown unknowns.
Mm-hmm. And the problem that I faced while reading this was, how do you actually identify the unknown unknowns if they're unknown?
I think that is a good question. I think that, to me, the value of this method would be to you can of course, if they are unknown, by definition, if they are unknown unknowns, you cannot know them. But the indication that there is always this area of unknown unknowns for a project is something that can direct your effort in trying to search for those unknown unknowns and make them known in a sense. If you know, I'm sure this sounds super vague, but I think to me the power of this is in realizing that, hey, there always would be things that can impact the project or activity or something which you do not know currently, and the question is, are you spending enough time to figure out what they are, if that makes sense for the stage of the project you're in?
I think for me it was kind of hard to imagine where exactly you would do that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at which stage of the project. I could imagine how, for instance, during the retrospective, you would talk about the known knowns and known unknowns and think how to deal with those. I could potentially imagine how you could try discussing the unknown knowns in risk management meeting. But the unknown unknowns is something that seems really like, when it happened and you didn't predict this, that's why it happened, because it was the known unknown, because it seems really out of blue. Even the example that they gave in this book about the Pearl Harbor
yes.
attack was kind of...
I agree, and I think that this would also be an illustration of the idea that it is important for models to have like area of applicability attached to them. I'm trying to construct an example where this might be useful. I don't know, like if you have a garden, let's say, and you want to do a landscaping in that garden, right, which may involve some kind of significant shifting of land and something like maybe you want to make a pool in there or something along those lines, and there reasonably you may anticipate that there, when you do something grand like this, there might be obstacles for doing that which are not obvious from the get-go. There may be an old, let's say, tree stump which is covered with a layer of soil which you don't see, and it never caused any problem for the garden as it is, but it would be a problem should you try to build a pool, a little pool over there. So this might be an unknown, and the way to deal with this would be to check what would be the easiest way to check that we can actually place the pool out there and it would not require any additional effort. Something along those lines. Of course, not super, something extremely outlandish attack on Pearl Harbor.
Fair enough. Would you like to go through the Swiss cheese model?
The Swiss cheese model, if people are not familiar with it, I would highly recommend them get familiar with it. I think it's very widely and widely used in how do you what's the right name for the industry that builds aircraft and aviation industry? I guess this is how they model the safety measures to prevent incidents from occurring. Basically, the idea is that there are layers of protection against incidents, like let's say on the engineering and technical side, we engineer in like duplication of systems, redundancy, and safety and reliability. But then there is kind of a layer of maintenance and inspections and stuff like that, which helps us ensure that like stuff on the technical side works correctly. But then and that works on the airline level or maybe aircraft manufacturer level. But then we have kind of governing bodies on the state level which oversee and define standards for how maintenance is done and how engineering is done. That's another layer of protection. And then I think that there is a fourth layer. But the idea is that incidents and bad stuff happens when holes are poked in all of those layers. And typically one failure in one layer should be caught by other layers, but in very unfortunate situation when the holes in those Swiss cheese layers align and stuff is allowed to go through, this is when accidents happen. And I think this is a very useful way of looking at maintaining like reliability and safety of the systems, and this is where the model would be most useful.
Sweet, because I couldn't get the idea about the Swiss cheese itself after reading, and the picture was not very illustrative.
Right. Yeah, I think the description is not great. I think they're doing disservice to a whole lot of the good ideas that underlie some of the stuff that they try to present with being so short on the description side, because the book is small, the font is not too small, and how do you the intervals between the lines is rather big, so what they say about everything, every little thing is roughly like 3 paragraphs of text, and it's impossible to do justice to good ideas in 3 paragraphs, I don't think.
Well, maybe some ideas are just not good enough to describe them in even more than just 3 paragraphs.
Maybe.
This is actually one of my few concerns that you haven't mentioned in your notes. It's the visual aspect of the models. On one hand, I was really happy to see different ways to visualize such things, because I think it's always a good idea to put something on a slide rather than text.
Right.
And if I ever have to explain something, I would put a picture rather than text. And pictures were fine unless there is a critical amount of mistakes in there. One of the points when I stopped looking at pictures was the innovation curve. The idea how an innovation gets on the market, like the early adopters, innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority stuff.
Right.
And everything seemed fine, but they picked iPod as the example. And instead of showing how it actually got on the market, they showed the number of sales per year and how it was actually... It was the... What was the name for this? When the product starts living, develops, and dies. Life cycle,
yes,
the product life cycle.
I guess so. I'm sure.
It's kind of an overlap, because initially, if you do the same thing with an iPhone, not an iPod, it stops working, because that's not what this model is about. It works in the retrospect, it works on the entire industry, but not on a singular product. And you can see how, I don't know, smartphones on average appeared, and what was the cell phone industry, who were the innovators, how many percent of people would have to use it as early adopters to create this mass effect of scaling, and so on. So the model itself is interesting, but the picture kind of kills it, because they put extra info there and it's about something else. And this is when I just stopped looking at pictures and said, all right, I'll just Google if I don't understand something.
Well, and that's a shame, because in general, this idea, this product life cycle model, and the idea of crossing the chasm chasm, for my pronunciation, is very powerful idea. And if there is the book, I think by Andy Grove, which is called Crossing the Chasm, and it introduces this model of kind of how innovations get hold in society, and it really kind of, as a model, it works, right? It has a lot of explanational power. The people went at length to see how different innovations, and innovations there in the category of product, not necessarily one single product like washing machine or some stuff like that, how they were adopted by the society at large. And that model kind of holds true, and it helps make product decision. But I agree with you that the presentation here kind of twists the idea beyond recognition. It's not... and they say, if you overcome the chasm, you earn money. No, it's not what this is about. It's not about earning the money, because the product may cross the chasm, and kind of the how do you say, the penetration of the innovation into society or the population at large is going to go high, but it's not given that you're going to earn money on that, because depending on the market dynamics, you may or may not earn money. If you have a monopoly position, you may, there are so many things that go into that. Right. My favorite, in terms of illustrations, my favorite one is, and I to mock authors a little bit, I'll read something from the introduction, where they say, I think they somewhere they make a point that, hey, put extra effort into illustrating each of the ideas. So the value of this book is you have a description and you have a visual that explains this idea. And then you read about Black Swan model, which is not a model, by the way, it's just an idea. Like let's gloss over that fact. But the illustration for this one is so pathetic. This is a black swan. All right. Yeah, well, that helps. I wouldn't.
Well, how do you illustrate a black swan?
Well, but this is the test that they should have used for what they're putting out. Like, if you cannot illustrate it, did it maybe cross your mind that maybe this is not the model or something? Because it's not. Like, it's an idea of a rare event, and you have to kind of make a judgment of how likely that is, and what can the impact be of that event. But there is no model to be had, I don't think.
It's a concept.
It's the concept, that sometimes in certain situations, in certain circumstances, can be useful either to explain something, or maybe, if you're lucky, to predict something, but it's not a model. I don't know.
I think that that's not a model could be a hashtag of this episode.
Yeah,
we can just count how many times we mentioned that.
Yeah, that's not a model. But maybe it would make sense to actually, when we are saying that that's not a model, to say what the model actually is. And I was surprised. I was trying to Google the definition for this. Like that's what we do. And I was surprised by how many definitions for the word model are there, because model is like a person who goes on a fashion show to present like new clothes and stuff like that. So there are so many stuff, and if you have a little kind of airplane that you play with, this is also a model of an airplane. But in our context, I think I put the definition of model. Oh, right. The model would be a simplified description, especially a mathematical one, of a system or process to assist calculations and predictions. And the way I would explain the model to a layperson would be model is a simplification that highlights the important characteristics of kind of object or process that makes reasoning about that process easier. Just because we stop caring about stuff which is not important for what we are considering.
If you were to give an example of models related to management in software engineering, is there anything that comes to your mind, or it's purely mathematical? And
no, I think we can have models at. I feel like I should be more prepared and come up with better examples for this. But the first things that come to mind is the, let's say in programming languages, we have it's not exactly an execution model, but it is close to that, like with the model of object-oriented programming versus functional programming. These are different models of how the calculations or computations can be organized, and they have their strength, their relative strength, and depending on the task, one is maybe more favorable than the other. So that's the model, but I guess that's still more computer sciencey, mathematically kind of model on the management side.
I think I could come up with an example with risks.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you estimate the number of hours or the scope, you have a tendency to get this extra, and it depends, 20, 25, 30%, but you know that there is something unknown there, and you include it just by default. You don't even sometimes assess the risks. You just say, all right, to be safe, we'll just get extra 20% to make sure that we have the resource if we need it when we find some unexpected things. And I think that in finance, when people do budgeting or in project planning, people use these risk estimates, and they heavily rely on 25, 30, I would say, the average amount of risk volume that people include into their planning.
Right. And on the softer side, I guess that the model for team kind of cohesion, which is the storming, what is it? Forming, storming, norming, performing. I think this is a model for how we can think about like forming a new team and then it going through stages. It's also it is a model because it simplifies the team down to those four stages roughly, but it provides useful insights into how you plan creation or formation of a new of a new team or onboarding a team member into the team as well.
Let me give you an example, and I'll ask you whether you think it's a model or a method. When people refer to emotional intelligence, and they say this is like a square that consists of your self-awareness, your social awareness, meaning how you understand your emotions, others' emotions, your self-management skills, how you can deal with your emotions, and your social management skills, whether you're okay with dealing with emotions of other people. And then there is a set of tools for each of them. Like if you would like to build up some empathy, if you would like to get better stress management tools for yourself, or something, how to deal with person who is in panic, for instance.
Right. Well, I would say to me that sounds like a model because it provides you a way of structuring stuff. And you say that in your, I guess, in interactions or in interactions with others or the rest of the world, all of those interactions we put into 4 buckets roughly, if I remembered correctly what you were saying. And this is how we deal with each of those 4 buckets. And if you do that kind of quote unquote correctly or in the right way, some good things are going to happen. So I think to me this like four buckets and with their characteristics would be a model, but then what's built on top of that, like you do X to cover Y, you do Z to cover A, you do B to cover C, and stuff like that. That would be more of a method that is built on this model. Does it make sense?
Yeah. And another one that I really love but nobody really gets is Bloom's taxonomy. The levels of thinking.
Right.
Education people are just big fans of this because you can set really clear educational goals using this thing.
Right.
There are 6 levels of remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. And basically your ambition for the course or workshop or something could be at different levels.
Right.
And it's so hard to explain to people who are not from education that I kind of gave up on it and said, all right, that would be just for L&D specialists. Like, I'm not presenting it to management people anymore.
It could be. And I think in general, my kind of thinking on models is that first, this is my favorite quote ever, I think, by George Box, a famous English statistician. He said that all models are wrong. That's true because they simplify and gloss over things, but some models are useful. And this also implies that there are some things that would be models, but they're not useful. So here, I think like with models, we can construct models like infinite number of models for every possible situations, but only some of those models would be really useful. And I think to me, at least to my experience and to my thinking, the models that are more specific and therefore have more specific and narrow area of applicability are the ones that often give the most useful practical kind of results or enable practical things. And it may be an example that this model is really well suited to educational setting where particular things need to happen by the kind of definition of what we are doing in education, and maybe less applicable to some other areas, even though they may look similar.
I think one day I'll just feed the audio recording of this episode to AI tools, and asked to script it out to count how many times we've used the word model in it. I think it should be something really high.
Yeah, well, that's because we were talking about models, weren't we? I guess my favorite model from the book, if my favorite model was like air quotes, right? It's in the beginning of the book, and how do I find it? It's page 38, and it's called the gift model. I grinned when I read it.
And the illustration is also amazing.
Right, but the model says that it's not a model. It just says you should give. You should be generous. Basically, you should go with expensive gifts. Okay, where is the model? Where is the model? But the illustration is there. Grandfather's.
And it's counterintuitive because your attention is more valued than a luxury watch. And what's the point?
It's so twisted out there. But
so summing it up, would you recommend anyone reading this book?
No.
Nope. That's a double no. Yeah. And if you happened to listen to 56 minutes of this episode about the decision book, we would strongly encourage you get in touch with us and maybe refer in some models that you enjoy or use or apply, because that would be really nice to hear that. I know that we have a number of methodologies and approaches and frameworks that we love, and we would like people to know about them more. So if you're a fan of a model, not in the fashion context and not in construction or design context, please do let us know.
Right, and I hope that kind of people do not take this like too harshly on the book. It's still it was an exercise, right? We had a good discussion of things that not necessarily we liked or disliked about the book, but the things that this book by and large inspired us to talk about, right? Even we discussed some of the useful stuff, useful models presented in the book. We touched on what the model is and how it relates to some other stuff. And I guess maybe the biggest lesson of all would be that it's important to make your own judgment about stuff. And even if the book says something, the book better provide explanation and justification for why it says so, because then you can validate something for yourself and then agree or disagree with it more, being more informed about what's going on. But if someone just says do X, you definitely want to ask them why, and if they are not available, ask yourself, why would I do X in this situation?
Start with Why by Simon Sinek.
Well, yes, in a good sense. Start with Why in a good sense, because yes.
So my summary here would be: if you expect to learn something, you probably shouldn't read this book. That's not a course book or a guide or something valuable in terms of learning. If you would like to check your concepts or check the way you think, like your mental approach, to have a mental exercise and re-evaluate some of the approaches and systems, it could be a good place to start.
Right, and one thing, like very last thing, it's always a pet peeve of mine with books like this, which say that this is an international bestseller. Guys, I don't want books that sell best. I want books that read best. I don't know.
That's why you have Goodreads.
Yeah, or something.
The service that actually gives you some content about the content.
Right. By the way, what does Goodreads have for this book? Did you check?
No.
Do we want to check
but
right now? Let's do that. Yes, I have it here, and Goodreads, it loads. Yeah, it loads a little bit more. 3.61.
That's
close
fair.
to 6,000 ratings. I think they are overselling it though.
You don't know. I mean, if we manage to get some useful insights from reading it, then why would you underestimate others?
Yeah, well, most people quite a lot of people give it 5 stars. Most people give it between 4 and 3 stars.
So on a scale from 1 to 5, where 5 good read and 1 is a terrible read, what would be your rating?
2.
I would go for 2.5. Yep.
Okay. So this is a decision model, right?
Yeah, scaling. When everything else doesn't work, just scale it on a scale from 1, hopefully 1 to 7 or 1 to 12, not 1 to 10.
But it's still, I think it was a great exercise, and thanks for bringing this book for our book club.
Next time there will be something else, but we don't know yet what it's going to be, so let it be the intrigue.
Right, let's keep the intrigue for a couple of weeks, I guess.
Yep, hopefully good weeks.